Welcome back to the Leftovers Podcast. I'm your host, Casey. I'm rebranding like Comcast. And this is my co-host, winner of the Dad of Year Award, Pastor Nate. Nate, how you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
I was waiting for a different name. I thought you were going to go with Casey and JoJo, but Casey is your name now.
JoJo.
So,
okay.
yeah, from back in the day.
Listen, if
All
we
my
got
life.
a qualifier for this particular podcast. So if you weren't with us yesterday, which was Sunday, it was Father's Day. This is the qualifier. Are you ready?
Happy belated Father's Day.
If you are a woman, just leave. Get out. Leave now. You are not. This is a men's only podcast today. No, it's not. I'm sorry. Welcome, one and all. Well, just because the message was geared towards fathers, So, but it's applicable for everyone. I think Pastor Nate said at the end of the message, he's like, ladies, if you're here, they were here. Take these notes and keep them for a later time when you're looking for a man.
There we go.
To marry, not just in general looking for a man.
Yeah.
But just to, yep.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we said. We said keep them. With the younger guys, we said, hey, listen, this is something to strive to. And then I said, ladies in the house, if you're single, this is what you want to compare men to as far as the list goes. And then all you mamas out there, this is what you want to make sure that you help raise your young men to become or your young ladies to look for as well, too. So it was good. Yeah, man.
Being a dad's a lot of fun.
Tons of fun.
24/7 fun.
Yeah.
Even cleaning up the puke.
There we go.
It was a lot of fun. Last week, Millie got sick, and I could not tell if it was pieces of cheddar cheese or pineapple that I was picking up.
Wow, that's wonderful.
It was a good time.
Nah. Is that what they call you, the dead man walking?
That's exactly why they call me that. Listen, if you've ever been a dad, or just a parent in general, or been around a kid, you know that kids get into stuff that you don't find interesting. That was all of the things that I was interested in growing up. And so I thought it would be fun to just play with a little game before we get started with my favorite thing that I'm absolutely not interested in and I despise, which is, are you ready for this?
Let's go.
Taylor Swift. Olivia is a huge Taylor Swift fan here in the office, and so she would love this game.
Just Olivia? Aren't you?
What's that?
Are you a Taylor
I'm
Swift?
not a big Taylor Swift. My dad's a big Taylor Swift fan,
okay.
for real. My dad's a big... any pop music. This game is called Lamentations or Taylor Swift. Okay?
All right.
And I'm going to give you a line of either a piece of poetry or a quote from a Taylor Swift song. You have to tell me whether it comes from the Book of Lamentations or if it's a lyric from a Taylor Swift song.
All right.
Would you like to play?
Let's play it. Let's do it.
Okay.
I had no clue that you were doing this, by the way. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, and I can't find it, so we're going to have to pause for a second. I apologize. Just while I look this up, you want to do that? You want to talk about the day?
Let's do it.
Okay. It was a phenomenal way to celebrate dads. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Father's Day, a lot of fun. Celebrating dads in general. I think there's this general stigma for churches that on Mother's Day we give these real honoring messages, like the mom is the unsung hero of the family. And then when Father's Day rolls around, it's like, get your stuff together. But I don't feel like it was that at all. I felt like the message was real honoring.
Yeah. That is true, though. That's the general consensus, right?
It is.
So, yeah, Father's Day was great. I mean, for those of you guys who were there, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. But we had a, makeshift mini car show. A lot of dealerships around here were kind enough to bring some of their vehicles and a lot of our people as well, too. And so we had that. We had hot dogs. We had some music going on out there. It's just a really fun time. So, and then on top of that, too, a lot of men responded, said we're stepping up to the plate. And then I think we had 2 people raise their hand for salvation as well. So it's a great day.
What was your favorite car on the lot?
My favorite car?
Yeah.
Probably this Ford Focus that was just to the right of the Chevy Black Widow. So
that was a joke.
That was a joke.
I got it. Excellent. Okay,
yeah.
good
Wonderful.
deal.
What about you?
Ernie stopped me on the way out in his Escalade, which it's seen better days. And he's like, I didn't want to put it on the lot because he's like, I just didn't want to show anyone up. And he was joking. I'd like to preface that he was joking. But yeah. All right, man. I have got Swift quotes.
All right, let's hit it.
Lamentations. Are you ready?
Hit me.
I think you're going to struggle with this.
Okay.
She cries herself to sleep at night, tears soaking her pillow.
Oh man, 100% T Swift.
No, Lamentations 1-2.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna get this
Isn't
all
that
wrong.
insane?
Yeah.
Your knives and swords are upon me that you use against me.
I feel like that should be Lamentations, but feel like this is a trick thing. I feel like I'm going to go with T Swift again.
Correct. Dude, where is she getting her inspiration?
I don't know, man.
My eyes are blind with tears. My stomach is in a knot. Maybe if I sing it.
Lamentations?
Correct. Lamentations 2:11.
All right.
All right. A couple more. You're like a lion ready to pounce. I feel this one going either way.
Yeah, me too. You're like a lion ready to pounce. I mean, that could be Lamentations. Could be I'm going to go Lamentations on that.
Lamentations. Yeah, for sure. Good guess. This yearning in the deep part of my heart for you. If you can guess the song, I'll give you all the cash in my wallet. And there is actually cash in my wallet.
So is that T Swift then?
That's T Swift.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Last one. What, did I already say last one?
No.
I'll never forget the trouble, the poison I've swallowed.
Lamentations?
Lamentations 3:19. So, if you're a dad and you can't tell the difference between Lamentations and Taylor Swift, go out there and pick up her newest album. It's on sale at Target or wherever you buy media, the internet. You can just torrent it, which is the moral thing to do with Taylor Swift CDs.
Oh my gosh.
Dude, all right, let's talk about the message. We can get into the serious stuff. I'm sorry. That was fun for me. Thank you for participating.
That was fun. Thank you for making me laugh. That's wonderful.
What a good message. I read the book that some of this was inspired by.
Yeah.
Four Pillars of Man, I think, by Stu Weber. I read this on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot in that book about how, like, most men stop with one of these things, like any goal that you can acquire, just that you can latch onto, but the model that we're building ourselves on as men is the Lord. It's Jesus, and he fits these four descriptions, and he pitches them to us, which we talked about. That a man is a king, he's a warrior, he's a mentor, and he's a friend, or a lover, as you put it.
Yeah.
And we want to emulate that to the best of our abilities. But here's the question for you. I'm a visual learner, which is why my mannerisms are so much like yours, and physically I'm starting to resemble you. I'm a visual learner just because I spend so much time around you. It's why I'm starting to get a nice base tan.
There you go.
And we laid out those four callings of a man. But what do you say to somebody who's not seen this modeled out for them?
Yeah.
Where do they get that from?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because that's where a lot of our men, I think, fall into today, that category, right? Of, hey, listen, we're growing up. You know, we know that we're men, we're called to be men, but what does that mean? What does that look like? Because if we're looking around, we just really don't know. There's not really a clear-cut definition. And so when we talked about these four things that define a man, the four callings of a man, I think one of the things that I'll say is, obviously, and this is, you can call it typical religious talk, but it is what it is. It's the truth. Is if you don't have a father, if you don't have somebody modeling this for you, Psalms, I believe it's Psalm 68 says, "Father to the fatherless, defender of widows." This is God. And then so, it takes masculinity begets masculinity. It takes men to initiate men. And the good news is that if you don't have somebody in your life to do that for you, the good news is that, man, God is literally, he's our Heavenly Father, and he wants to take you on that godly masculine journey and initiate you into manhood and father you himself. And then so I think that's the biggest thing, is if you don't have a prime example physically, you can look to the Lord for that. And I think too, one of the things that we don't really that we don't realize is that if you look around, you'll see glimpses of different types of the callings of a man within different people.
Sure.
And then so even if you can learn to watch and to pick and choose and to say, hey, I see this, I see that from different men, and emulating that. And then after that, men, applying that to you, right? What does that mean for me? How does that look like for me? I think that's one of the best things that we can do. And so I know for me that there's been, one really big influential, man mentor in my life. But outside of him, I've seen different things molded by different guys that, man, I hope to emulate. Obviously not copy, like, on a specific basis, but then apply, man, what does that look like for my life as well too? So yeah, I think the Lord, and then when you seek the Lord, he kisses you with other men to be able to look to as well too, with different areas. So
yeah, absolutely. He'll send leaders.
100%.
All that to say that if you're in the process, I'd say of looking for somebody to lead you and to mentor you and to give you those things that you should be fully aware in that relationship, that they will never display those things perfectly, that they are as human as you are.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to accept that before you start looking to them. So ultimately, the Lord He displays all these things perfectly.
Right,
no man is
100%.
going to display them perfectly.
100%, right.
But is there anything in particular here out of the message you gave us, King, Warrior, Mentor, Friend, that was most difficult for you to adopt into your life, to want? So when I said earlier that I was a visual learner, it's easy to learn something when you're interested in it.
Yeah.
When you have no interest in it, walls are up, like it's such a drag. But when you can see somebody, I mean, this is how fashion catches on. Like when you see somebody that you identify with, they could wear the dumbest thing and you'd be interested in it. Like you would want that too. Crocs got big that way. But, I'd say like King, Warrior, Mentor, Friend, you find somebody that you like and that you identify with, and it makes you want to do one of these things. Yeah. Is there any that you've struggled with more than another?
I mean, that's a really good question, and just to let you guys know, if you guys didn't hear the message, you guys need to go back to it. And so, we look at Genesis chapter 2, a little bit in chapter 3, but Genesis chapter 2, we go to the original man Adam, and we look to that because you see, man, the Lord calling this out in him. And Stu Weber, he makes the assertion. He says that just as you see balance, right, with north, south, east, west, with the 4 different seasons, man, that there's a balance to the 4 callings of a man. And then so let's define it real quickly, and then after that I can talk about, man, which one I struggled with the most. So the king, we said the king is man, he's the provisionary at heart, right? And then we define what provisionary is. It's not being a provider, but it's being a provisionary. And then those are 2 totally different things. So a provider is somebody who says, hey, what do you need? Let me give you the money. And then after that, like, my job's done. Yeah. But a provisionary is so much more than that. It's somebody who looks at the horizon and tries his best to keep thinking forward, to keep moving forward and prepare his family for what comes next. We said that the man is also a warrior, that it's a protective heart. It's not a sadist who loves fighting, inflicting pain. It's literally somebody who just, protects. Like, that's the calling of a man there. And then after that, we said that he's a mentor or a teacher. That he passes on what he knows, that he's there to help raise and to pass on knowledge. And then the last thing we said was he's a friend or lover. But, not lover in the sense of, romantic way, but in the sense that, man, that we were meant to connect to the people that we lead with, that we were meant to have that heart connection is what it is. So I think for me, man, growing up, I think for me, I don't know if growing up, but I think for me, the thing that I really had to develop the most is probably the king portion, and then maybe a little bit of the friend portion as well too. So the king portion, because that takes a lot of intentionality.
Oh, sure.
It's not something that you just sit there and that somebody naturally does. At least for me, I don't. Because the king is the one who sits by, your son or your daughter's bed and asks the Lord, man, like, Lord, how have you created my son or my daughter, right? It's the one who sits down and who asks, hey, they're about to enter into middle school. These are the temptations I faced, right? But obviously times have changed. Yeah. And so how do I best prepare my child for middle school, right? They're the ones who say, hey, my child's about to go off to college. What do I need to instill within them? And I think when you start asking those questions, then you can go back and say, okay, I need to start doing this now while they're in elementary, right? In order for them to be prepared going to college. And it's also the husband who asks things like, hey, my wife is going through this right now. And how can I be the best, husband for my wife? If things are going the way that they're continuing to go in our marriage, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and like, would we like it? And then if not, what do we need to change now before we get there down the road? And then so that provisionary of always looking ahead at the horizon, and then after that coming back and saying, how can I prepare you? I think that's the thing that I've had to work on to develop the most. So everything else I feel like just comes a little bit more naturally. But yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still wrapping my mind around everything. Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
I feel like I'm digesting a lot. I mean, it's a big book and it shouldn't be read all at once either.
Right.
Big in this, it's really not that large, just in the sense of
its content.
Its contents are, just so, there's so much there.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tender Warrior by Stu Weber, and then he also has another companion book called The 4 Pillars of a Man's Heart, and then so those are just, really what drive a lot of this discussion. So, But it's all really good stuff, man. And again, I think that was just birthed out of the quest for me to discover, because, you know, my dad died when I was 4. And then so trying to discover, man, what does it mean to be a godly man? Yeah. So I know a lot of us are in that boat. And if we can, you know, man, paint that clear picture. And I really feel like, too, that that's the reason why there's a lot of confusion, dysphoria, not just
good word choice.
Yeah, not just you know, with gender, but also with roles as well too. That, you know, I can do this, and these are interchangeable, and whatever else. It's because I don't think we've done a good job of clearly defining who has God called men to be.
Yeah.
So providing that clarity there. But yeah, man. Yeah. What about for you? Let me ask you that. Which one do you feel like comes more naturally, or which one do you feel like that you've had to grow and develop in?
I feel like I've struggled with all of these at different times. I grew up like anything that I didn't like, I would just polar opposite it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you a story very quickly from last Wednesday night where my guys were eating and all my youth students were eating. The guys were separated from the girls for whatever reason. I don't know why they do that. It was like a middle school dance. My teeth do that too. And I went over to the girls' table to talk to them, and they asked like, "Oh, you know, why aren't you with the guys or whatever?" And because I usually try to build some friendly competition between the guys and the girls. My staff hates that, and I told them, I was like, "Dude, I have a daughter, so I just be honest with you guys. I think girls are cooler. I think they're just cool." I didn't mean that, but that's what I said in that moment. And one of the girls said to me, "I don't think that that's the case, Pastor Karl. I think you're just more feminine than you are masculine." Yeah. So, which is like an ongoing joke in my life, is that I don't know. That's an ongoing joke. I think growing up, I didn't identify with like the cultural definition of masculinity, because it was very like black and white, Arnold Schwarzenegger, John Wayne, the Solo, and so I would just do the opposite of whatever I saw like the bullies in my school do. And so, you know, I could see like the king's provision, his role as the provisionary. I always thought like you're really robbing people of their ability to choose for themselves. So I did the opposite of that. I was like my mindset was very libertarian, like who has the right to do that? But as I grew in the Lord, I saw like that is birth. The provisionary is birthed out of a heart for people. And I desired that because I saw that in Christ. I saw that in you. I saw that in Adam. I saw that in Pastor Joe. And I wanted it. And so I started cultivating it. And the warrior, obviously, like I'm not your definition of a manly man who fights. That's not my but again, it comes out of a desire to protect those people who are in your care, and to do whatever is necessary to keep them safe. And so I saw that again in you and in Adam and in Joe and the mentor. I think I just love to teach. My dad's a good teacher. That's the one that I think I identify with the most. Well, when I was growing up, he was a PGA pro, and if he's taught me anything, it's how to golf. So, but I have such vivid memories of him teaching me, and those were probably some of the best memories I have with him. And so I think I just identify with that. I love teaching people things. It feels like you're connecting on just such a spiritual level when you do that. But the friend one is the hardest. Going back to doing the polar opposite of what you see. Growing up, my sister was very emotional. So I just hated emotion from the get-go. And I thought, if I could be like Data from Star Trek or Spock, I'm not joking. And it wasn't until I got married, and I married a woman. And I don't know if you know this, but women have emotions. It's pretty crazy.
That's deep.
And when they were similar emotions, I thought to myself, maybe they aren't bad. I think Vicky got real frustrated with me our first year of marriage because I didn't understand why she was emoting at all. And I realized you can't take that away from people. And you made this phenomenal analogy in this message. It's just like friends, like they're not intimidated by their friends' emotions. You said they're not leaks meant to be fixed and clogged and blocked off, that they're wading pools. They're meant to be felt. They're meant to be, the Lord created emotion for a reason. And I think this is like the crux of being a good friend, is that you're willing to bear with your friends, bear their emotions with them. it just never seems convenient because you're not the same person. You don't feel the same emotions.
Right. Yeah.
But that's what a friend does.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you come to me with your emotions. I'm going to sit with you and endure this and experience this with you.
Yeah.
Mourn with those who mourn, weep with those who weep.
Yeah.
And
and I think in the church world, like that's one of the things that's really hard to do, because I think number one, you just feel like you're not doing anything if you're just sitting there with somebody, right? You're not accomplishing anything. So I don't feel productive, so I'm not doing anything. But I think the other thing is that as Christians, sometimes we, inadvertently, we do it with good intentions, but I think inadvertently, sometimes we're just insensitive, and we wouldn't say that, right? But I think, for example, like you go to somebody who's grieving because they lost somebody, and then as good Christians, what do you want to do? You want to try to comfort them, so you say things like, at least you know where they are now. Or you'll say things like, if somebody's lost a child, you might say something along the lines of, well, the Lord needed another angel up there. And
I'm cringing so hard.
Yeah.
God, I hate
but
that.
but listen, but that comes out of a good heart, right? Because you're trying to encourage somebody, and you want to help them, right? Fix their emotions. But at the same time, like, man, that's not being a good friend.
Yeah.
Man, what'll help the grieving person more isn't the talk that you give. It's just you just willing to sit there and listen and just be and just commiserate with them, right? And then so Job's friends had it right the first couple of days. They just sat there with Job. But then after that, when they started, getting off track and giving their own advice, that's where they started to go wrong. And then so I just think as a Christian, just that sense of connection, right? So, and then as men too, it's hard because when you don't know how to fix it, you run from it. But sometimes they're just not meant to be fixed. Just stay there.
I'm thinking of practical ways to practice that as men, because I feel like I don't want to generalize, but this is an area that men struggle with collectively, probably more than other areas.
Yeah, most men, yeah.
I think like the John Wayne Man, which he talks about in either Four Pillars of Man or Tender Warrior, has become like the cultural identity for American men. The individualist, like I can do it by myself.
Yeah.
Most like adult men I know don't have friends, which makes me wonder, like, how did you get married? Do you talk to your wife at all? But like, advice on how do you, because it doesn't appeal.
Right.
So, the visual that we have been given as men has made us want isolation. It's made isolation desirable. It's made individualism desirable. Like, what do you do practically to desire intimate friends and intimate relationships? And which is the definition of a friend, intimacy. How do you desire that?
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right, though. It's hard because as men, like, we put up a lot of front, and again, we're not trying to generalize or say, hey, this applies to everybody. But I think for most men, it's typical that it's hard for us to connect on a deeper level. So most men, we can talk about fantasy football, cars all day long, but then when it comes to our heart-to-heart issues, man, like, we hardly have anybody to talk to about that stuff. And then so I think first thing is actually believing that that's what people want, people desire. I think as men, we kind of put it off because we think, nobody wants to talk about my emotions. I don't want to unpack that. They're not going to be interested. But on a deeper level, like, that's the way we were created. Like, we were meant to create like that. So, there's that old, saying that you impress people with your strengths, but you connect with your weaknesses.
Right.
And then so even as a team, I know that, Karl, you've said this to me before too, but I can preach, I can teach, I can do whatever all day long. But I think the times that I've heard Karl say, man, I feel so much better after talking to you, was after the times that I was vulnerable with you.
Absolutely.
And express an area of weakness or something I'm struggling with or something that I'm thinking about, because, it lets you feel normal almost, makes me normal. And then so I think as men, number one, you just got to believe that we were designed for that, right? And then that's why we're so messed up, because we just don't unpack it, and we were meant to unpack it. But then I think too, man, you got to have courage. It's funny because we talk about men having, courage and, being courageous, whatever else. Man, sometimes, men, the most courageous thing we can do is admit that we're weak. Sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is say, hey, listen, I just need to talk to somebody and just tell somebody what's on my mind, tell somebody what's on my heart. And I'll say this too, that, men, that if you're struggling with this, if you think, man, I don't have I can't connect, I don't connect on a deeper level with men, can I just encourage you? man, give it away, initiate it, and then just see what happens, right? One of the Hebrew words for men is piercer, and it's more than just a sexual connotation.
Yeah.
But it really has to do with men piercing the atmosphere, men piercing, with what needs to happen. And then so I think even as men, as you initiate, as you pierce the atmosphere and say, hey, listen, I'm weak right now, I'm vulnerable, this is something I'm struggling with, man, and then just see what the Lord does from there, right? I know that, for me, it is really hard for me, at different points to open up about my dad dying and, unpacking all that stuff. But I just remember one time I went up to the altar during a chapel service in my high school, and I've never expressed it to anybody, never put it into words, but I remember, man, the first time that I let it out, it just felt so freeing. But one of the pastors at my school came up to me and said, Nate, why are you up here? Like, what can I pray with you about? And then I said, I just feel like I have a hole in my heart because I don't have a dad. I don't know how else to explain it. And then from there, he started crying. I started crying. And I'm like, I've never done this with anybody before. But there was just something cathartic and good about, man, just expressing what's in the heart and connecting on a deeper level in that way. And then even as men, too, just practicing doing that with your wife, man, it'll unlock a whole new emotional state, right? Level of intimacy for you and your wife as well, too.
Yeah. She wants to know what's on your heart.
Yeah.
Piece of advice.
Yeah.
That's good wisdom.
What are you worried about? What are you fearful for?
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us have experienced at some point or another actually opening up and regretting that we did so. I think that's also been the...
It's true.
Yeah.
But you know what? Life is also, ministry more so. For those of you guys out there, if you're in ministry and you're watching this, you'll get this. But the fight in ministry, one of the biggest fights you'll ever fight, and one of the biggest fights you'll ever fight in life, man, isn't to expand the kingdom of God. One of the biggest fights is to keep your heart soft and tender, and to keep your heart vulnerable. That's one of the biggest fights you'll ever fight.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of room for guys to dismiss the four callings of a man. There's a lot of acceptance to just walk away because scenarios create acceptable opportunities to do so. Things don't work out with your spouse. You can drop the friend portion of it. You can drop the king portion of it. Things don't work out in your job. You can drop the mentor portion, or mentor calling, sorry. There's a lot of, and it's perfectly acceptable to dismiss sections or the entirety of your calling as a man of God to live out these roles, to live them out well. I don't know. It's just, what next steps?
Yeah.
Next steps.
Yeah.
How do I integrate this? And I think about in Lord of the Rings, which by the way, okay, never mind. You did a great job. I was so glad you referenced Lord of the Rings. That was amazing.
Appreciate that, man.
I'm a big Lord of the Rings guy.
Are you?
The call isn't always evident, like it was for Aragorn in Lord of the Rings. It was obvious when Aragorn said, when Aragorn was given the position, told to take up the role as king. These are the consequences if you don't. If you don't take this role, this is what's going to happen. Yeah. And that's not the case for men day to day. It's not always obvious to us that if I don't live this calling out, this is what's going to happen to my family, this is what's going to happen to my community, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So more than what are my next steps, how do I realize that calling? How do I accept that calling?
Yeah.
How do I become convicted of that calling and realize if I don't step up in these roles, this is what will happen?
Right.
How do I make that a practical and daily decision?
Yeah.
And maybe that's too big of a question.
No, I mean, it's really funny because I don't know if I forget what book it's in, but there's there's a story that C.S. Lewis wrote. And he talked about how, and he gave this visual story about how the devil was at a table around with a bunch of his head demons. And then he talked about, how can we deceive the world? And then one of the demons pipes up and said, hey, listen, I'm going to go and I'm going to tell them that a hell doesn't exist, that there is no heaven or hell, that the earth is just what it is, And then and then after that, the devil replied, that'll never work. And then another demon said, hey, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go and I'm going to convince them that that heaven doesn't exist, that I forget what it was, right? The first one tried to convince him that hell doesn't exist. The second one tried to convince him that or the opposite doesn't exist.
Okay.
And then, the devil said that wouldn't work either. And then the third demon piped up. And then the third demon said, I will convince them that they always have time to do it tomorrow. And then the devil spoke up and said, yes, that will work.
That's funny you say that.
Yeah, because then you can keep putting it off until tomorrow.
Wow.
And then so I would say this. I would say that we're living in a world today where men had put off the calling until tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You can tell how powerful something is either by its presence or by its absence. You put it in, something changes. You take it out, something changes. We're living in a world today where men have withdrawn from walking out the four callings.
Yeah.
And you see the consequences of where we're at today as a society. And so you're not going to see a big impact immediately, but the ripple effects branch on beyond what you can see. And then that's what we're experiencing. So here's the good news though. So the bad news is that you can't change the past. The past is the past. But the good news is that we can still have a hand in changing the future. But you've got to start somewhere, and it's got to start with someone, and then let it start with us in this generation. Let it start with, I can't speak to the generations that came before us. I can't speak to the type of man that you saw, to the legacy that was handed down to you. But what I can say is that where there was lack of legacy, you can create a new legacy. What I can say is that if you've seen generational curses, you can institute generational blessings. And what I mean by that is you can start a new way of life that you're posturing yourself to receive the blessings of the Lord and walking in His goodness and walking in His favor. And then so as men, I would say that that's my encouragement, that's my challenge, is that we're living in that world today, but let's make it different. And then as a next step, what I would say to us is, it's simple. Just take that next step, whatever the next step is. As men, I think we might look at this and think, man, I'm so far from this. I'm so far removed from that. There's no way I could ever become, king, warrior, mentor, friend, what the callings of a man. I would say, I would challenge that. And I would say, yes, you can. Just are we willing to work towards it and just take the next practical step? So we're not going to become, that overnight, but how can you get 1% better in being a king?
Yeah.
How can you get 1% better in being a warrior? Right? Is it just simply killing those bugs that that scare your kids? That's being a warrior right there. How can you get 1% better in being a mentor, and being a connector? And the thing is that don't put it off until tomorrow. Do something about it today. So again, we can still change the tide. We can still turn this thing around, but you got to be willing to take that next step and just not give up. So that's what I would encourage us with.
That's good wisdom. Thank you so much. Men, Jesus is calling today. Mm-hmm. You're calling, obviously,
Amen.
That's follow Jesus. Your appointment is as a man after His own heart, after God's own heart.
That's right.
And He will make you into a man after God's own heart.
That's right.
So please answer the call. Don't delay. Mm-hmm. I feel like a teleprompter. What are those like infomercials from super late at night? Answer the call. Don't delay.
Yeah.
We need men. One more point of order. Which is this is more applicable to my season of life, I think. Mm-hmm. Most of my problems usually fix themselves. So when I think of the role as king or provisionary, when I sit in a problem long enough, usually it just resolves itself. As a provider, as provisionary, as king, that is not the case. Mm-hmm. The buck stops with you.
Yep.
So if you're in a situation as a man trying to be a man after God's own heart, and you're not progressing, you're in a cycle, things are going consistently, you keep reaching the same spot. Mm-hmm. If the same issue keeps presenting itself, you're not moving forward, you're stuck, you are in a circle.
Right.
And if things don't change, you're going to continue to be in that circle. And the solution, because the buck stops with you, is to find other kings who know about your cycles and can help you move forward.
True
so
that.
The reason I'm telling you that is because there are so many guys that reach the end of their lives thinking that, hey, we've been pretty successful. My family had food, my family had clothing, but their family doesn't like them, or their family has suffered as a result of the cycle and truly has not progressed in God's calling in their lives. And so, as a man trying to live out the calling of God, man, seek out other kings that will help you grow, learn, and continue to be humble. So,
yeah.
All right, we'll end with that.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for Father's Day. We hope that you were blessed.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys next week. So we're going to close out the series step by step. And so we hope to see you there, and it's going to be a great time together. All right, y'all have a great week.